Hi guys, welcome back to For Your Heart and Home. My name is Dee Dee, and if you're new here, welcome. If you are returning, my apologies to you. Welcome back. I will be providing some new videos in the coming weeks. You will see that there will be a shift in the content because as a wife and mother, I spend a lot of time in the kitchen, and I find that being in the kitchen is part of my passion. And I want to put out videos that will showcase my passion and will help other parents in similar situations as I am. As a homeschooling mom, I do spend a lot of time with my children working through lessons, but like I said, I also spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I hope to show you what I do on a weekly basis to keep my family fed. This video is a restock video, so we make a lot of things from scratch here, and I will show you some of the baked products that we use throughout the week. I will be showing you sandwich bread. I will also be showing you bagels, which I recently learned how to do, and tortillas. I used to buy tortillas almost on a weekly or monthly basis, and so the fact that I learned how to do this now is super exciting. At the end is a bonus clip of making cranberry juice, something that again is new for us. We've never worked with cranberry before, or I have never worked with cranberry before, and so it was cranberry season and I wanted to expand my canning repertoire, and so this was something new and exciting to try. My family loved it, and so we've been drinking cranberry juice for the last several months. I hope you enjoy this video. Stay tuned to the end. Okay, here I'm showing you how I make sandwich bread. Now, I make sandwich bread in my bread machine, and I will link for you the bread machine that I am using here. You do not need a bread machine to make sandwich bread, but I have one and so I utilize it. I will note that I do not bake anything in my bread machine. I use it for kneading of the dough and for the warmth so that my dough will rise. But after the dough cycle is complete, I remove the dough from my bread machine and I finish it off in my convection oven. So I'm just following the directions for making sandwich bread. This is a recipe that came with my bread machine. Again, I will link that in the description box so that you can see the recipe that I'm following along with. And I really love the bread machine because I can just put the ingredients in. I let the bread machine do its thing. I don't have to worry about anything, and it produces very good bread loaves for me. I've been using my bread machine for almost 13 years. So my husband and I, we realized that a lot of things that we were buying at the store was just not up to standard to what we wanted to put in our bodies. We wanted to do a whole body cleanse before even having children. And so prior to having children, I decided to get a bread machine. And I've been using a bread machine for, like I said, maybe 13 years. And in that time, I've used my bread machine to make so many things. Besides making basic sandwich bread, I use my bread machine on a weekly basis to make pasta dough, to make pizza dough. I've used it to make cinnamon rolls, and it's been a very well utilized tool in my kitchen. And I just enjoy having this tool in my kitchen, and I'm just fortunate that I'm able to have this. Once again, if you don't have a bread machine, you don't have to worry about getting this equipment just to make bread. I'm just sharing with you what I have used it to do in the past several years. So now that all my ingredients are in, I'm going to move my bowl to the bread machine. Okay, so now I'm going to start working on the ingredients for tortillas. I, like most other families, buy tortillas all the time. We use them for quesadillas, we use them for wraps, and tortillas have been a staple on my grocery shopping list for the longest time. They're quick, they're easy, they're fun, and now that my children are getting older, it's something that they can use to fix themselves a snack. And so tortillas, I think, like in most families, again, are a staple on the shelf. So I wanted to find a way to make our own tortillas, and I've been researching this for quite some time, and I figured out how to make hard shelled tacos. And so I was like, okay, let me try to see if I can also learn how to make tortillas. I found this recipe and I'll link it below in the description box. And I've used it, but I must say I don't necessarily love this recipe. I've made tortillas with using butter and have used also oil. With this recipe that I'm showcasing today, the tortillas turned out fine. They had a good flavor, but I prefer when I used the melted butter. So I think I will go back to the melted butter option. So I will link both of the recipes in the description box. Feel free to use the one that makes the most sense for your family. So I put all of the dry ingredients in, and then as you will see, I will use a spoon to incorporate the ingredients together. I must note that I am using store-bought flour, and this is leftover from holiday baking. I and my family have been using freshly milled flour for the last several months, and we have really loved that process. I did, however, purchase flour from the store to take care of holiday baking because we were gifting things to family and friends, and we wanted to make sure that the taste was what they expected. So I'm using leftover flour. I've noticed with flour from the store, I have a reaction. And so I have to limit my exposure to the flour, which is why I'm using a spoon right now instead of my hands. I find if I limit my exposure to the flour, it works out fine and it plays out well. So as you can see, when I find that I've used the spoon enough to incorporate what I need to, I will go in with my hands. They're clean, I promise, and pull it together. I will work with the dough until it comes together, and you'll see me cleaning the sides of my bowl, and I will use this as a guide to tell me how and how long to knead. Like with most baked products, you don't want to work with the dough too much because you don't want it falling apart or getting hard. So the more you do this, the more you'll get used to the process and you'll learn to read the dough. Once it's come together nicely, I am going to let the dough rest. The ingredients I'm using and the recipe that I'm using will be linked down below, so you will get all the instructions of what to follow along, how long to rest. So I'll put a cover on my bowl and let it rest for a while. Once the dough has rested, now I'm going to get my parchment paper. I like to crumple it up. That's a trick that I learned along the way. I can never get my parchment paper to just sit on the tray, so I crumple it up and that seems to do the trick. I'll sprinkle some flour because now I'm going to work with my dough on my mat. Now that the dough has rested, I'm going to form small balls with the dough. Again, you don't want to work with the dough too much because you don't want it to become hard. I believe with this recipe, I was able to roll out 10 tortillas, which honestly did not last very long. So I'm going to roll out my dough, put it on my tray. Like I stated before, tortillas are a staple in our family. We use them for quesadillas, we use them for wraps. And again, my children are getting older. So now, as long as I have the tortillas already made and prepped, they can go to the refrigerator, they can go in the kitchen and they can help themselves. They can make a quick snack, and that's something that will continue to build their independence in the kitchen. If you're working with the dough and you find that it's a little sticky, just have a little flour on hand to put it on your hands because the more you work with the dough, the warmer you're making the dough. So it's going to tend to get sticky. Keep a little flour on hand, and as you can see, I'm touching the mat to just get to keep a tiny bit of flour on my hand, not too much, just enough to prevent it from sticking. Now the second step is to let the dough rest once again. While the dough is resting, I will cover it with a kitchen towel just to give it a chance to relax. Now that my dough has relaxed for a short while, it's time to get my rolling pin. I'm going to flour my rolling pin just a little bit so that it won't stick to the dough, and I'm going to gently press this out. I have done this enough time where I know that I need to get the dough as thin as possible to get the best tortillas. You're just going to gently roll the dough in both directions until it is as thin as you can get it. You guys, I am so excited to have figured out how to make tortillas. This is one less thing I have to buy from the grocery store. And my children actually enjoy making this with me. So if they can jump into the kitchen and help me, my girls love to do Play Doh. And so for them, this is Play Doh come to life. And they love to roll out the dough with me. They also enjoy flipping the tortillas when I get it on the stove, which I'll showcase in a few minutes. This is me just doing my best to roll it out. You guys, we're very rustic around here. We're not striving for perfection. We strive for flavor and we want to make sure that everything comes out as best as possible, but it is not going to be perfect. Now I'm ready to move it to the pan. Now that my pan is nice and hot, I will put it down on the cast iron pot. I will fast forward this part because it takes a little while. You want to keep it on the pan until you start to see bubbles forming. That's your cue to flip the tortilla. And again, this takes a little while, but while it bubbles, while you wait for it to bubble over, you can roll out the dough of the other ones. So here you see me rolling out the next tortilla while I wait for the one in the pan to cook. Now, if you want to do multiple tortillas at a time and have several cast iron pans ready to go, you are welcome to do that. I am in a small space, and so this is what works for me. Again, you'll see me rolling it out. I'm not striving for perfection. I just want to get my dough as thin as possible so that when I put it on the pan, it will cook evenly. By this point in the day, it was about lunchtime, and like I said before, these did not last. We're a family of five. I have three children and my husband and myself, so these did not last very long. As soon as they were finished, my children were able to grab the toppings that they wanted to include in their tortillas. Well, really, we made quesadillas. And I don't know if anyone else does this, but we'll take pizza toppings and we'll put it inside our tortillas. So my son and my two girls, they took the pepperoni and they took mozzarella cheese and they were able to build their own what we call pizzadillas. Here you see me showing you the completed tortillas. We got about 10, like I said. They're nice and soft, they're palpable, they're pliable, and I took the tray to my children so that they could work on building their pizzadillas. I realized quickly that I needed to shred some cheese, so I grabbed my little handy shredder. This thing has come in really handy. Since buying blocked cheese, it was a pain to try to shred the cheese by hand. But as soon as I got this, my problem was solved. I simply load pieces of cheese on the top and then I turn my wheel and I have shredded cheese. So I'll fill this bowl with shredded cheese so that my children can build the pizzadillas they need for lunch. You'll see that my cheese grater is spinning on the mat, and that's simply because it's on the silicone base. Had I put it directly on my countertop, I wouldn't have had that issue, but because I was trying to do too many things, I ended up running into that issue. But it worked out fine, and we survived. That's another thing I wanted to segue into. So we have changed our shopping habits for a lot of things. I was buying shredded cheese every month, like most other families. I would buy shredded cheddar cheese and I would buy shredded mozzarella cheese. And I learned that shredded cheese is coated with a substance that prevents it from clumping together. And I learned that sometimes that substance can be detrimental to the human body. So we stopped buying already shredded cheese, and now I will just buy blocks of cheese. I will buy the block of mozzarella cheese or would buy the block of shredded cheese. So we did that for a while. And like I said, before I got this handy tool, I was shredding by hand. It was arduous. It was annoying. I nicked myself a few times. Then I got this tool and it really helped me with that process and sticking to buying the blocks of cheese. But then I also learned and I questioned why cheddar cheese was orange. And I did some deep dive into that and realized that shredded cheese, not just shredded cheese, but all cheddar cheese or most of them are dyed. So the orange shredded cheese or the orange block cheese that I was buying was dyed. And I had to question, why were we dyeing cheese? So they dyed it so that they would have that consistent orange color. So I've also switched to buying white cheddar cheese. Again, because I didn't want to have to contend with the food dye. And here I am showing you the completed tortillas. Again, they worked out really nicely and they were gone by the end of the night. So once my tortillas were done, my bread machine went off and it was time to take out the loaf I made earlier that I will be turning into bagels. Now, the recipe that I'm following again is from my bread machine and I use my basic sandwich bread recipe for most things. I use it for bagel making and I use it for sandwich bread. I will link in the description box a recipe for making bagels and a recipe for making sandwich bread. I'll also link the recipe that came with my bread machine, so feel free to use whatever works for you. Before I roll out my dough for the bagels, I will start up my bread machine again so that it can work on the dough for my sandwich loaves. Now, with this dough, I usually get about 8 good sized bagels. Now, you can make them bigger, you can make them smaller, whatever works for your family. I have been making bagels and sandwich loaves because some people in the family like bagels, some people like sandwich loaves. So, don't want to make too many bagels and then have them go stale. So, I will make about 8 bagels and then I'll make 2 sandwich loaves and I'll show you in a bit how I do that. With this dough, I'm going to first cut it in half and then I will cut each half into 4 pieces. I do my best to portion this out evenly, but again, we're not striving for perfection. If you want a more uniformed look, feel free to use a kitchen scale. I do have one, but again, I'm not striving for perfection here. I just want bagels. So I will portion them out as best as I can, and then I will form them. When I form my bagel dough, I will first form them into balls, not too tall of balls because I don't want dinner rolls. I want bagels, so I'm going to make them on the flatter side, and then I'm going to put them on my tray to rest. When it's time to put them in the water bath, I will pinch the middle to form the hole and put it in the water bath. I find this works best for me. If I make the hole too early and I leave them to rest, then the holes tend to close up. Either way, it's fine. It's still a bagel, but I prefer to wait until right before putting it into the water bath to form the hole. And I just pinch the middle with my 2 fingers, and that works for us. So here you see me. I'll take the dough, roll it into itself, pinch the bottom, and then I roll it in my hands. Again, you don't want to work with the dough too much because it will become tough. So I'm using gentle fingers and a gentle palm. I'm not squeezing too much. I'm using baking soda in my water bath. Some people have used honey, some people have used sugar, but I use the baking soda. And the more baking soda you add to your water bath water, the harder the crust you're going to get. The more pretzel-like crust you will get. So if you like a nice crusty pretzel type bagel, then you'll put more baking soda in the water. For me, I use anywhere from 1 to maybe 2 teaspoons of baking soda. So now it's time to put the dough in the water. Then I'm going to take a slotted spoon and I'm going to put it in the water bath, okay? You're going to leave it in your boiling water for approximately 30 seconds for each side. So 30 seconds will pass and then you'll flip it over. Another 30 seconds will pass and you'll remove it from the water. The longer you leave it in the water, the goopier your dough is going to get and it's going to end up losing its shape. So between 25 seconds to 30 seconds is how long you want to leave it on each side. And once it has been in the water bath for approximately 1 minute, you're going to pull it from the bath and put it directly on the tray you intend to bake it in. Some people like to leave this to do another rise. I don't do that. I find that again, my dough sits there and it gets a little too goopy. So once they're all finished and I pull them from the water, I will put them directly into my preheated oven. At this stage, once they have been pulled from the water, if you would like to add toppings like sesame seed, everything bagel, cheese, cinnamon, sugar, if you'd like to add any kind of topping, now would be the time to add them. I wanted to keep my bagels plain, and so I just left them like that. I put them in my preheated oven and they baked for the allotted time. And here you see that they're all done, nice and golden like we like. It was time to turn my attention to making my sandwich loaves. Like I said earlier, I use my bread machine to do the kneading and the rising of my dough. But once my dough cycle is finished, I will remove the dough from the bread machine and I will divide my 2-pound loaf into 2 separate cast iron baking pans. I give a generous layer of butter on my pans before I add the dough. You do not want to skimp on this step. Cast iron is wonderful to use, but if you do not season it or if you do not put a layer between the dough and the pan, they will stick. You will see a little bit later that these loaves will fall right out of the pan if I take the time to do a generous layer of butter. So here's my loaf out of my bread machine. I put a little flour on my mat and I'm going to turn this out onto the mat. This is about enough dough for a 2-pound loaf, and had I left this in my bread machine, I would have gotten a very tall loaf. And I was doing this when I first bought the bread machine many years ago, and I found that we did not enjoy the bread as much. It was too tall, and once we started having children, it was just way too much bread for them to be contending with. So I've since learned that I can divide my dough, into 2 separate loaves, and it's much more manageable. You can see my dough is a little bit sticky here. I'm kind of fighting with it. I'm adding just a little touch of flour so that it's not sticking so much either to my hands or to my silicone mat. Once I get it to a nice consistency, I will cut this in half. I will shape it and then I will put one in each of my pan. Now, I've learned through the years that the loaves will go stale if you do not use them quick enough, and if they're not stale, they will mold. I store my bread 2 ways. Once these 2 loaves are done and they have completely dried, I will put them in a linen bread bag that is lined inside with a plastic lining. I would like to upgrade from that to something different, but for now that's what I'm using. And I will take one of the loaves and I will slice it and put it in a plastic Tupperware type container so that my children can easily access the bread. It's already sliced and they can just take out what they need and help themselves to make a sandwich. And we use these to make peanut butter or jelly or jam sandwiches and cheese sandwiches as well. So here you'll see I have shaped the loaves and I've put them in my pan. I am going to leave them in the pan so that they can double in size before I bake them. As you can see here, they have doubled in size because I took them from the counter, I put them on the back of my stove, and the warmth of my stove helped them to do that final rise. I will then stick them in the preheated oven and let them bake off. Alright, as a video bonus, I wanted to include our family's favorite drink over the last several weeks. It is canning season here where we are. I wanted to expand my canning repertoire, and so I've been canning cranberries. I use the cranberries to make cranberry juice. In this version, you'll see that I'm using cranberry juice and pineapple juice, as well as a little bit of blue agave for sweetening. I will blend this in my blender, and then I will add this to a 1-gallon pitcher, add a little bit of blue agave for sweetening, and voila, that's it. A delicious drink, very simple, maybe 5 minutes to make. My family loves it, and we've been drinking some variation of this for the last several weeks. Here you will see that the bread is finished and out of the oven. They fell right out of the pans because I took the time to do that generous layer of butter, and they are a wonderful size, easier for my family to manipulate. I will wait for this to cool completely, and I will place one of them in my linen bag and the other will go in a sealed Tupperware container already sliced. The bagels are also done and out of the oven. I couldn't show you the tortillas because by this point they were long gone. Once again, thank you for watching this video. I hope you like and share this video, and I hope you enjoy this content. I really enjoy my time in the kitchen, and if I can share this with you, and if you can get some inspiration, or if you have questions about this content, please feel free to leave a comment below. And again, if there is anything that I mentioned in this video, I will link it in the description below so you can check there if there's something that you need more clarity on, or if you have questions about something. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope to see you again soon. All the best.